Remember the brilliant FuriBee X215, one of my favourite quads reviewed so far? Well, now there is an S version and we've got it for review. So into us from GearBest is the S version of the brilliant X215. Now the packaging is a bit lazy here. Rather than actually printing a new box and putting an S on the end, they've just actually printed it and stuck it on, which is a little bit interesting, but it's exactly the same box. So very interested to see what this quad looks like compared to the regular version. First of all, as with the original, you get 2 sets of spare props, which is really good. And then here is the quad. Now you do get a GoPro Session or a Runcam 3 mount, but we're not going to need that, and I'll explain why. The reason is, when we look at this quad in more detail, you'll see that it includes something a little bit different. We'll have a look at that in a minute. So what else do we get in the box? Well, exactly the same as the original 215. You get the little pagoda antenna. I actually found that to be really impressive, so I'll probably stick with using that actually. We also get a battery strap and of course a battery bottom carbon plate, which I highly recommend using. That protects your battery in the event of a crash, so really, really good idea. But that's it from the box. Let's take a look at this quad in more detail and compare it to the original. So there it is, the X215S. Now this comes in at £160 or $180. That's compared to about £100 or $140 for the original model. So you are paying a little bit more for this quad, but there's a good reason why, and it relates to this big purple thing on the front, which is a new camera. So just whilst we're comparing them, we'll just have a quick look at the difference in weight. Now the original has got props on, so bear that in mind, but they don't weigh a lot. So we've got 346 grams. That's the original 215 Pro. And if we now take the new version, we've got 332. So if we put a bag of props on top as well, 355. So tiny bit heavier, but not a lot. Now the key reason for that is because of this camera unit on top. Basically, this is a whole new flight controller board, and the great thing about this new board is that it includes a HD camera facility. So this camera on the front is not only your FPV camera, but it also gives you 1080p footage. So you can record high definition video without needing to strap on a Session or a GoPro onto this quad. So that is a really good thing in terms of weight saving. So talking about this arrangement, this actually is called the FuriBee Fort X, but it's also identical to the Eachine Stack X as well. Absolutely identical visually and in terms of specification. The new stack replaces the F4 flight controller that we had on the original one, and of course this has got some additional little bits. So we've got these buttons here on the side. One of them is for starting and stopping recording, the other one apparently is for resetting the camera. Just below those buttons as well, you'll see a tiny little cable which we didn't have on the old one. Now that is exposed externally and it is a little bit vulnerable potentially, but apparently that's for what's called a floating IMU on this new flight controller board. So essentially it's like soft mounting all of the sensors on the flight controller, which basically means, as far as I'm aware, you don't need to soft mount the flight controller itself. So interesting feature, but that ribbon cable is very, very exposed. So in relation to this new camera, this new board also has an additional SD card slot. It's in a really awkward position. It's just underneath the VTX antenna on the rear of the flight controller. Bit tricky to get a card in and out of that. But yeah, that's your SD card slot. And of course, there's another SD card slot on the side, which is for your black box log reporting. Not sure why they still bother putting these on flight controllers, because your average FPV flyer really doesn't care about using that. I guess the professionals do. It's not really going to talk about the quad construction because it is identical to the original, but we will talk about the differences. And one of those differences is the motors. So on the original, we had 2206, 2600 kVs. On this, we've got 2306, 2400 kV. So slightly lower kV, but a wider diameter motor. So hence that means they're going to be slightly more torquey. It'll be very interesting to see what the performance is like between the two, because actually I love the 215. It had plenty of power. If this has more power, then even better. So obviously the other core difference is the camera unit. Now this does stick out substantially and it kind of undermines the point of this lovely aluminium frame, which is to protect that camera lens. Now on the original you can see that the lens is embedded quite nicely inside that and it's protected, but on the new S model that lens sticks out massively, but it's still a nice lens and we should get some good footage through that. So besides that, everything else is pretty much the same. It also comes again with the XM Plus receiver inside. It is zip tied and heat shrinked onto the rear, but unfortunately it's quite clumsy and all they're going to do is end up going into the prop. So I'm going to actually have to undo that and re-zip tie them with the zip ties facing the right way around. But at least they've tried, that's what matters. It's an interesting quad. It's not necessarily an upgrade. It is for a different type of pilot. Until you're a really good pilot, the footage is not that enjoyable to watch back. So I don't bother. This is quite nice because at least you've got the option of that HD footage without carrying the additional weight of a high definition camera. So yeah, it'd be very interesting to see what kind of flight test we get out of this. And that's exactly what we're going to do next. I have been looking forward to this. So this is the FuriBee X215S, which of course is the enhanced version of the regular 215. Of course, the main difference is this lovely camera on the front, which is a high definition camera as well. Now, so I don't forget, when I tested this earlier, I did actually find that this camera arrived massively out of focus. And on this little camera here, on this Eachine F4X board, there is no locking ring around the lens. So if you're not careful, when you even just take the lens cap off, you might knock the focus out. So the first thing I did was to hook this up to my headset, focus it through the FPV, and of course that then made the high def footage and the 5.8 gig feed nice and clear. So yeah, not really a big issue there, and it's not really a factory issue either. They can't help that being rotated, but it should come with a locking ring, so a bit odd. I've also redone the antennas here because they really weren't very nice from the factory and they were curling all over the place. So put some nice strong zip ties on there, and it means those antennas are much better mounted now. Also put some green on there just to suit the props. So anyway, first of all, we're going to take this for a LOS flight, just to see how it feels compared to the regular 215. So power it up, look at those lovely LEDs on the back. They look really, really good. These buttons, as I said, the one closest to the camera here, that starts and stops the recording. If you press that, you probably can't see out here, but the blue light under the main VTX board starts flashing. Wow, now I've been flight testing a few quads today. Having flight tested those tiny little quads, this one feels super powerful. Now remember that the motors on this S model do have a lower kV than the motors on the original 215. However, these motors have a bigger diameter and so should be more torquey, but the same props come with both. So this would probably actually benefit from some deeper pitch props to get more power. But we're going to see how it goes. So let's take it for a little fly around. Such a great quad, this in the air. Now you don't immediately, it's very hard to tell the difference really flying this quad compared to the original version, but you know, it feels powerful, as did the original 215 of course. So without putting the two of them in a kind of head-to-head race, it'd be very hard to distinguish between the two of them, I would say. Anyway, let's have a look at the punch of this one. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Wow, yeah, that is powerful. That is really powerful. And it sounds lovely with those big motors and props. Really, really nice. Seriously powerful quad. Right, so let's, we've been recording that as well, so let's get on to the FPV test, and of course we'll enable that HD footage and show you some of that as well. So first of all, in the top right hand corner, my RSSI is actually over it, But ignore that for the moment. Look behind that, you can see where it says standby in green. So if I now press the button on the side of the quad, that will turn it on the recording like that, and now we've got the recording. So that's quite nice that you always know when you are actually recording, so that you don't lose those lovely moments that you capture when you're flying. Now, as far as I'm aware, you can't see that recording on the HD footage, and I'll put that on the screen now just to confirm that. So that's good. Now the picture does look a little bit dark actually, but I must say it's lovely quality. So let's get this up in the air and take a look at how it flies. Now, don't have my OSD unfortunately, other than RSSI, and it seems to be that this camera actually truncates the image. So not quite sure why, but I did notice actually when I got the menu up as well earlier that actually, there you go, some of the features when you're configuring them actually get chopped off the screen. So yeah, this camera seems to truncate the image from the OSD, which is a bit of a pain. Not quite sure why. It might be that this camera has a way that you can switch the resolution or the aspect ratio or something. I really don't know, but that's something we'd have to dig into the manual, and of course this doesn't come with one. Anyway, enough of me chatting. And up we go. So as I said, the quality from this camera is really nice. I did have to focus it, but having done that, quality of this looks absolutely lovely. And as expected, this quad flies very nicely. Very nicely indeed. Now it does feel like these are not the stock rates. I'm not quite sure what settings are in here, and I didn't actually look at that when I configured this, I'll be honest. But yeah, these are not the standard rates that came with the other FuriBee quads, that's for sure. It feels very different to fly, but it is lovely to fly, and obviously loads of power, as we can see if we punch like that. And yeah, that is little dog there. Loads and loads of power. I really do love this quad. I love the original one. The great thing about this is that you don't need to carry a GoPro camera, because it basically comes with one. And hopefully if I switch now, you can see the HD feed, and if I start flying a little bit smoother than I normally do, hopefully that HD footage will look really, really nice. Now remember, the HD footage is only 1080p, but that should be plenty. Most quadcopter videos are around that sort of resolution. Some are 4K, but of course then you have to decrease the frame rate. And for nice FPV, you want a nice high frame rate. Whoa, look at that roll rate, lovely. Oh, this is such a lovely quad. I mean, basically this takes my favorite quad and it just makes it even better. Really, really does. Now, one downside that I see about this is that the camera tilt is as far as it goes with what you can see now. And that's largely because how largely useful choice of terms there. The camera is large and it doesn't actually fit properly in the frame sufficiently to give you any tilt, which is a bit of a shame, because I think most people are going to want more tilt than we've got here. I'm not a very advanced FPV pilot. This amount of tilt nearly hits a tree just as he says that. This amount of tilt is perfect for me, but some are going to want a lot more, and that might frustrate. Having said that, if you want more tilt, you're probably building your own quads by now, so it's probably not going to be much of an issue. Woohoo! Isn't that lovely? Absolutely lovely. This really is a great quad. I mean, when you consider the cost of it as well, not only are you getting a great quad with a great specification, but you're also getting a HD camera, which just really tops off the package. And you get the little pagoda antenna. Now, I know it's a bit of a love it, hate it scenario with the pagodas, with some reviews, but personally I really like them. I mean, I'm getting really good signal here. I am on 200 milliwatts here, so that obviously helps, but still, you know, you can be on 200 milliwatts with a rubbishy antenna and just get crappy signals, so I'm quite impressed with this. Now, we have got battery beeping, and so we better land at this point, but I have to say in summary, this is a brilliant quad, and if you're looking to buy any FuriBee, definitely consider this one as your main choice. It is bloody brilliant. Links to the X215 Pro S are in the video description, so do support our channel by clicking those links. Give us a comment below, thumbs up, and of course, if you're not already a subscriber, click that button now. Thanks very much for watching.